Hi everyone, it's Rachel here at Ditch the Diet. I am with Dr. Aria tonight. Hi Dr. Aria, how are you?
I'm very well, Rach. It's really good to chat to you again.
I know, it's great. So for those of you that are watching that aren't familiar, Aria was on the Ditch the Diet podcast just a couple of weeks ago. So if you are a subscriber to the podcast, then you will have hopefully heard that episode. We've had some really good feedback from the episodes. I thought we would do a little bit more of a collaboration, seeing as we have such similar thoughts on the diet industry. So before we get going, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? So who are you and what do you do?
So my name's Aria and I'm a doctor in clinical psychology and I specialize in long-term health. So I did my doctorate down in UCL and I was looking at, for my research, I was looking at sustainable ways to lose weight but then keep it off for the long term. And I've developed a method which looks at the psychology of weight loss because whenever we eat, it's not just about eating when we're hungry. It's our relationship with food, it's our emotions that tie us in. It's often the mindset that we have, and whenever we have the right mindset, the natural, healthy actions follow a lot more easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we spoke a lot about that on the podcast as well, didn't we? About the fact that losing weight and keeping it off is about so much more than
Yeah,
simply what you eat and how you exercise. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong when it comes to actually, starting something and then seeing it through to the end.
mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on? Should we dive straight in? What are your thoughts on? I know. I just want to say, I'm just going to put it out there, right? I'm probably really unprofessional today because normally I have a really detailed list of questions when I'm interviewing someone or talking to someone. But tonight I thought, nope, we're just going to wing it tonight. So I thought we'd have a little bit of a discussion of what you think are the most important things when someone is possibly considering starting some sort of weight loss program. What are the alarm bells to look out for when something is a load of shite?
Yeah.
So
That's a good question. I think the first thing I'd say is to almost just stop for a second and take a step back, because I think there's a huge fundamental flaw with the diet industry at large, and that is that it's generally based on a quick fix, on something that says, I promise you will lose, X pounds in X weeks. All you need to do is follow this diet, do this, do that, and you'll lose weight. And unfortunately, it's not based on what the science says happens, and it's so misleading because people go on diets, they get quite excited and quite hopeful that this diet will provide the answer. And the research shows that any type of diet can work in the short term. You'll lose weight initially, but the majority of the time, there's so many restrictions and something's been cut out from your diet. It's just not sustainable and people can't keep it going. And then they think they failed. They feel like they lack willpower, they must be lazy, or there must be something wrong with them, or they've been restricting for so long that they then bounce the other way by the end of the night and they just end up binging, and they just have that sense of urgency that they just need to eat and they just feel like they're out of control and they think that there's something wrong with them, and it's not right because it isn't their fault. You haven't failed. As we talked about last time, that it's the diet that's failed. It's a flawed strategy from the very outset.
mm.
Is that something that you can relate to, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. The viewers, if they listen to the podcast or if they've followed me for a long time, they'll probably know that of my terrible background or relationship with food was very similar to that, and that was that I never went to any of the slimming clubs, but I was always trying the latest fad, whether that was not eating any carbohydrates or just cutting my calories so low that I could hardly function, to the point where I don't know if I told you this story in the podcast or not, but I went, like, I decided to cut all carbs out because I thought that would be the best way to lose weight. And I didn't have really that much weight to lose. And I was a fitness instructor at the time, teaching like 25 classes a week, fitness classes, running on no carbohydrates. When I look back, I think I don't actually know how my body managed to do that. And but then I don't know if you've heard of the Whole30 diet, where you cut out, like, it's like a paleo diet for 30 days. So, you know, by day 2 of doing that, that was probably where my relationship with food took a turn for the worse, and probably has never really fully recovered since. By day 2, I was sitting with a bit like a piece of paper, writing a list, say, of things that I was going to binge on when I finished.
Yeah, God.
But I didn't see there being any. I didn't see that as being strange at the time. But when I look back now, I realise that what I was struggling with at that point is the same as what the vast majority of people that joined the diet are struggling with before they join.
I think that's part of the problem, because it's almost like the devil that no one sees. It's a part of the fabric of our culture that if you want to lose weight and you say to someone, what are you going to do? The first thing they'll say is, I'll go on a diet. And that's generally, it's just become the norm that we go on a diet. And even eating behaviors that we call disordered from a clinical point of view have just become what people do, skipping meals, restricting food intake at one part of the day, and then end up eating way more than you feel like eating later on in the day. Feeling like you need to earn calories or earn food, making like massive changes in what you're eating, cutting out entire food groups, and it's just, it's not sustainable, and it's painful, because people then, unfortunately, it fosters this idea of becoming afraid of food, and people are like, oh man, I'm afraid if I eat that cake, I'll get fat, or if I eat sugar, I'll put on weight instantly, or if I eat fat, I'll get fat. And people start to fear food and then feel anxious around it, and feel really guilty whenever they eat foods that actually could give them a lot of pleasure.
Yeah, this is like so familiar to me, because 100% of people that I talk to that eventually become members of the diet are in that position. That position that I was in. But I'm thankful and grateful that I can now look back and actually see how disordered that actually was. But at the time, it was so real, so normal, and so real, because I wasn't the only person doing this. There was a group of people, or it's more normal to tell someone that you're on a diet than it is to tell someone that you're just eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're not. Like, that's more normal to say. You fit in better with your peers if you're on a diet, especially as a woman. Obviously, I can only talk from our point of view, is that especially as a woman, it's much more socially acceptable to be on a diet than not. Because most people are. I can't remember what the statistic is, but it's something ridiculous, like the number of people that are on a diet in the United Kingdom at any one time. It's like over 60% or something like that.
Well, they've done. I saw one analysis which was like globally taking in lots of data points, and it showed that on average it was something like 44% of people are trying to lose weight, and about 22% of people are trying to keep weight off. So you're looking at essentially two thirds of the population, which in the UK would be over 34 million adults, would be trying to lose weight or keep it off.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest problem? Obviously we have a problem with this. We know, there will be people watching that are possibly still in that position of feeling, that their eating patterns are disordered. A lot of the messages and questions that I get are messages of pure panic, and I get them every single day without fail. I feel like my eating habits are out of control. I know it's not normal, but I just can't seem to change it. So first of all, let's just talk about, is that normal, and is it something that you can change?
So it's definitely everybody's from my perspective, the people I've spoken to, it's people's experiences, absolutely, of feeling out of control at times. But there's a way out of it without a shadow of a doubt. And the first thing I think is rejecting or just seeing with clarity that diets don't work. And actually, that pattern of restriction and of banning certain foods, it just backfires. So we almost need to take a completely different strategy, a completely different approach. And I think the first thing is to almost stop labeling foods as good and bad. And we know that some foods will have more health benefits than others, but just taking away this black and white thinking of I can't eat that, I can eat that, I should eat that, I shouldn't eat that. Because as soon as we put that black and white thinking, then the things which are banned actually become so much more enticing. And we know it's like that whole forbidden fruit, or if you're in the dating scene and someone's acting like you can't have them, people want them more. So, and they've done the studies with chocolate, where if you ban chocolate for 24 hours, when people come back into the lab, they want it more. Their intensity and craving for it has gone up, and then they end up eating more of it. So they end up eating 133% more, which is quite amazing. So yeah, the first thing is to see that food is food, and you can eat all the foods that you love and still be healthy. It's just about finding a more balanced relationship with it. But that's so much easier to come whenever you take that first step and we stop looking at certain foods as being banned and we start trying to cut out and restrict ourselves.
There's so much information out there now that I often, something that I come up against every day as well, is that people are starting to realise now that diets don't work. I think it is starting to filter through a little bit. And one of the biggest things that I come up against is, okay, I've decided, I know that dieting doesn't work. I've decided that I no longer want to do it.
Yeah.
But that thought scares me because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. Well, I have that with my clients who are often, they say, I get what you're saying, but I can't see how, I can't see another way, and I can't see how can I eat all the foods I love and still lose weight or keep weight off or be healthy. And I'd say it's about shifting our mindset away from calories. So stop thinking about calories, because whenever we get obsessed with calories, we overlook so many other things. We don't look at how healthy foods are, how much satisfaction they give us, whether or not they keep us fueled for longer, they give us stamina, how much pleasure we get from the foods. So I'd say stop thinking about calories, because whenever you turn it into a question of calories, it becomes then about outplaying the system and tricking the system in order to try and sort of beat it. So, if people are counting calories, might get to the end of the evening and think, oh, great, I've got 500 calories less, and then just eat food that they don't need. Or vice versa. They've eaten their quota, but they're still hungry. Their body obviously needs more nourishment, but then they feel so bad and guilty because they think, oh, I'm eating more than I need.
Yeah, because these rules are in place.
Exactly, and it's these external rigid rules.
You just brought back memories for me there. It's like it gets to the end of the day. Yeah, calorie counting is another thing that I've got a massive chip on my shoulder about. Because I did it for a long time as well. And sometimes I would get to the end of the night, like you said, and I would have like maybe, let's say, 250 calories left of my allowance. And I would eat them even though I wasn't hungry.
Yeah.
And when I think back, I think, no wonder I couldn't tell whether I was hungry or full up, because I was constantly ignoring the signals that my body was giving me.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really, really want to hone in on, especially now with what we're teaching here. Is that learning to listen to your body and not to be frightened of hunger. I don't know if you come up against this in your practice as well, that people tend to be told, especially at swimming clubs, this seems to be a recurring theme, is that they're told never to go hungry, make sure you keep eating so that you don't get hungry. So a lot of people, the words that are used a lot are, but I'm scared that I'm going to be hungry. And what I would say to that is, well, being hungry is a normal everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
Being hungry is a hormonal normal reaction to your body telling you that you need to eat.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to be scared of.
Absolutely. But it has become feared. And I think it's to do with those reasons that you've mentioned. I've had a lot of clients who have been to slimming clubs, and those are two things that have come through. One is that fear of hunger, and and that often leads to people. I've had clients that have said, they're never hungry throughout the day because they're continually like topping up, because they're just afraid of that sensation. And whenever you explore it, like you're saying, hunger is a completely natural physical sensation, and it's not something to be feared. Some people then go the other way, and they think that they need to continually be hungry, and that's what a diet means, for them, because they're not giving themselves enough nourishment, and they wait until they restrict so much. They wait until they're so hungry and they're so tired that it's like pulling an elastic band. They then just go the other way, and they eat so much more than they feel comfortable eating, and then just feel pretty disgusted with themselves and lost at how can this happen again.
So many times.
Yeah.
I've been there so many times, and I wish I could just I get messages like this every single day, and I wish I could just press the fast forward button for people,
Yeah.
and be and be 12 months down the line looking back.
But it takes time. I think it's that's why it's wonderful that you share. And when I've listened to your podcast, that you share your personal experience, because it takes time, and there's no. Often to my clients, there's no end point. Health doesn't have a finish line. We'll never reach that point where we're suddenly there and it's I'm done and it's over. We eat every day as part of part of staying alive, and I'm still learning, and I'm still having occasions whenever I eat more than I intended or than I feel full at, or I don't plan things out well, or whatever it is. But it's about, you just reach that balance more often, and then it's just about being gentle with yourself whenever you do in your head mess up, because there is no perfect diet and there's no perfect way of eating, and it's all about just finding more balance. I just think it's about moving away from the extremes. And so, taking with eating, like you're saying, it's like eating whenever you're slightly hungry, and then stopping whenever you feel really pleasantly satisfied and full. And that doesn't happen overnight, but the more you practice it, the easier it becomes.
With your client base, what types of people is it that you mostly see? What kind of diets have they been on, and what is the most common thing that you come across when it comes to diet rehab?
It's a whole diet rehab. I like that. It's a whole range, to be honest. Some of my clients are in their 40s and 50s, and they've told me they've done every diet under the sun, from Slimming World to Weight Watchers to the Grapefruit Diet to Atkins to keto to whatever, Rosemary Conley, whatever. They've tried everything, and they've reached a stage where they're often heavier than they've ever been in their life, and they're fed up with dieting. Like, it's just lost they see through the illusion now. To other individuals who might be in their 30s, and they know they're quite health conscious, but they're noticing they're beginning to put on weight, and their bodies, they feel like their bodies aren't able to get away with the same things they did in their 20s, and they want a different approach, and they quite like people that are quite interested in psychology, or quite interested in how the mind works, and they want to better understand themselves, so then they can have the tools to change. Or some of my clients who actually have gotten to such a pattern of restriction that they're underweight, and I'm helping them to understand the psychology to take away a lot of the fear and the barriers so that they can eat enough in order to gain weight.
It's interesting that you see both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things at the moment that seems to be plaguing the fitness industry is, and we briefly touched on this in the podcast, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it from a psychology point of view. What are your thoughts on people switching from something like Weight Watchers or Slimming World, where they're counting points or sins, or I can't remember what the other one's got a nickname for as well, to counting calories? I know you briefly touched on that before, but in the last week, I have had 3 people email me saying that their personal trainer, no offense to personal trainers, there are some really good ones out, had given them a set of calories, a target of protein, carbohydrates and fats to hit every single day, and that they were literally at their wits' end, confused with what on earth they were supposed to eat. I'd love to get your thoughts on the psychology, like what sort of effects that can have on people in the long term when it comes to like restricting foods and not being able to listen to your own body, just following a set of rules, I suppose.
I think that the problem with food rules are that they're often very formulaic and they're applying to everyone, and each person is so unique and so individual. Their taste preferences are so different. The type of foods that they like to eat can be very different. The way that their body metabolizes different foods will vary as well. And so just taking this one size fits all solution and saying you just need to eat X number of calories or track these macros, there's no evidence in the scientific literature to support that being a feasible long-term solution. Every person is individual, is, like we're saying, the individual, but I think psychologically what it does is it reduces food down to a number, and actually people then, the decisions that they make will be vastly skewed by that. So if someone came to me and said, look, you've got 120 calories, you can have 2 Jaffa cakes or an apple and a pear. If I'm basing it on calories, I'm going to go for the Jaffa cakes. Now, that's okay to go for the Jaffa cakes, but I'd much rather go for the Jaffa cakes whenever I really feel like eating Jaffa cakes and it's going to give me a lot of pleasure and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to enjoy them. Rather than feeling like when you bring in calories, it brings in a sort of like scarcity or deprivation mindset where you've only got X number and they're getting used up, so you may as well use them for foods which are often moving us away from our goals. Whereas if we just move more towards nourishing our bodies and thinking of food as something that, that can give us a huge amount of pleasure. Alfie, my dog's come to say hello, by the way.
Oh, I've seen the pictures on your Instagram.
Yeah. I was going to say at the start when you were saying that you're not feeling very professional, I was like, don't worry, I've got Alfie in the background, like he's dead.
Oh.
But yeah, I'll see if he pops up. But moving towards listening to your body, because whenever you actually then take a step away from calories and you more look at, okay, how can I nourish myself today, and how can I create a breakfast that I really love. Pleasure is a massive part of food. It's always going to bring pleasure that I really enjoy, but then also is going to keep me feeling more satisfied and giving me a bit more stamina for the rest of the day. We're going to make a vastly different decision to, I've got 300 calories or 500, what am I going to spend them on? What's your experience with yourself or with clients in terms of calorie counting and what effect it has?
So calorie counting I was on the calorie counting bandwagon personally for a number of years. And at first it sort of felt like a bit of like freedom, because it didn't matter what I ate if at the end of the day my calorie target matched the number of calories that I'd eaten. I almost felt like I had achieved my goal that day.
Yeah.
And it didn't really matter what I ate. It was just, as long as these numbers match this target number, then that's all that matters. And this went on for a number of years, to the point where I don't know, there wasn't like an epiphany moment or anything like that, or a turning point, but I was starting to get obsessed, just as obsessed with that as I was with low carbs, or it was mostly low carb that I did, to to be fair, that was my biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I realised that I didn't want to live my life with my phone in my back pocket all the time, ready to like type in what I was eating.
Yeah.
And then I realised, I thought, and I used, there were circumstances where when I used to work one-to-one with clients in the nutrition setting where I would use that, like for example, if they were athletes and they literally had to make sure they were eating enough, or, we would track for a little while. I used it with some weight loss clients as well. I was always a little bit funny about using it with weight loss clients, but it was like one of these things that everyone else was doing it, so it must be the way forward. Yeah, and this was long before I had any sort of psychological understanding of the emotional aspect around food and the physiological aspect of eating, I suppose, and the actual process that your body goes through, but more so the emotional aspect. And I realised that over the course of these years, I had become sort of, I don't know if obsessed is the right word, but I would really start to worry if I got to the end of the day and I wasn't able to put in like what I had eaten. And I would often find myself, like if I was going out for dinner with friends, before I switched to being vegetarian, I used to go to Nando's all the time. I was like a total Nando's fiend. I used to eat Nando's like 3 times a week. I don't know how I managed to afford it when I was young. So I would put in, because Nando's was something you could find on Fitness Pal. It was always safe because you could put in. And that would like take up 2/3 of what my calorie allowance was for the day.
Yeah.
So then I would spend all day eating like very little, and by the time I got to the restaurant with my friends, I would be that over hungry, dizzy, lightheaded way. And and one day I thought to myself, oh my God, this is happening all over again, but in disguised as a different approach.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is not normal. And do you know what? Guess what? I wasn't losing weight. Because my body was under so much stress, worrying about calories, there wasn't really an epiphany. And to be perfectly honest with you, I stopped tracking calories in about September last year, so it wasn't even that long ago. And I was quite anxious in the beginning, but here I am 6 months later, and I haven't gained a single pound, and I feel so much better. Like I can wake up in the morning and, if I don't fancy having what I've programmed into my Fitness Pal for lunch, if I don't fancy it, then I'll have something else.
Yeah.
And I won't panic about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see for other people, because a lot of the time I see people, make sure you've planned your food in advance for the whole week. And then it's like, but what if I wake up on Wednesday morning and I don't feel like having an omelette for breakfast? What if I want to have like a bowl of cereal, or what if I fancy having some yogurt or fruit, or like, and then I realised I was living by a set of rules, but it was dressed up in a really fancy way.
And it's so refreshing. I think that's something which my clients often tell me, is that it's so refreshing not to have to count calories or track macros or add things up and have to do mathematical calculations to figure out how much you have left, whether it's points or calories. And to me, it feels that life's too short. Like that would just take up so much time, and it stresses people out so much as well. That life is so much bigger. It's at the same time, I think it's that balance of also keeping food and realizing that our weight and our body is just one small aspect of who we are, and actually we're also partners and friends, and we've got careers and passions, and we've got family, and we've got all these other aspects. We've got personal qualities, and when we get so caught up just in weight and on numbers and even on nutrition, it can just consume so much of our headspace and so much of our waking lives that people are really suffering.
Yeah, and it's so antisocial as well. I would see times where my friends would be going out, or they would be having a drink or something like that, and I would just say no. And I look back and I think, my goodness, like, what if I don't wake up tomorrow morning and my last day's been spent counting calories?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do understand, and I do say to people, I do understand that weight loss is your goal. If that is your goal, then you're allowed to have that as your goal.
Yeah.
But there's a longer way to go about learning how to do that is actually the shortcut.
Yeah.
Because if you repeat a diet, whether that's counting calories, macros, some of our Weight Watchers, keto, whatever, if you repeat that every 12 weeks and then fall off the wagon for a decade or longer, 2 decades, or your whole life, or you spend a year learning to listen to what your body is telling you to do with a bit of guidance, and support. If you spend a year doing that, what really is a long approach? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about the types of things that you teach your clients. Do you call them clients or patients or?
I call them clients.
Clients, yeah.
One of the things, following on piggyback what you're saying, is that health and if weight loss is your goal, sustainable weight loss, it's the long game. It's not. People haven't gained that weight overnight. Often when you look back, it can be over a year, 5 years, even decades that this weight's crept up. So it won't go overnight. So one thing is to manage your expectations and to realize that you're not going to be able to change things overnight, but you can always be moving in the direction of your goals. And so I've been working with clients specifically with weight loss now for about a year and a half, and my first client now has lost over 25 pounds and kept it off that entire time, and is losing more. But it's never like a linear. If you're looking at weight, it's never like a linear loss, or people think I need to lose 1 to 2 pounds every week. Our bodies don't work like that. Overall, you might see a pattern of going down whenever you treat it as a long game, but you'll have different fluctuations on different days. And so what I often, at the heart of it is, it's about the long game. So it's about making changes that you can keep, not just for a week or 4 weeks or 4 months, but can you keep this change next year and in 5 years and in 10 years? And what we're doing, will change as time progresses, but we went over those 3 questions I often ask clients. If you're going to make a change, is it something that you're going to enjoy? Like, do you feel good about it? Because if you're not going to feel good about it, we're not going to make that change. Is it something which you can imagine doing in a year's time? And if someone came to you who you care for, it could be a child or it just could be a best friend, and they said, look, I'm thinking about making this change, would you recommend it? And say, yeah, I think it's a good idea. And when you can answer yes to those 3 questions, it's probably going to be something which actually you can sustain. And then it's about starting small. Just take one small step. What one thing could you do today? And then you could repeat each day that would make a bit of a difference. So I often just start with one meal. I start with breakfast. How could I make this breakfast a breakfast that I really enjoy, that I'm excited about eating, that I wake up and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to have that, but actually it's healthy at the same time. And just start with breakfast. And when you've got that under your belt and it's just a part of your daily routine, you don't really think about it, have a look at lunch and take it in that sort of stepwise progression. And that's what I found, that these small changes end up compounding over time and lead to much bigger results.
And how do you deal with things like self-sabotage when maybe a client has come to you and said, I totally screwed up, I didn't do what you told me to do? Do you see that a lot? Self-sabotage moments, or?
Yes, I now often refer to it as almost self-defeating comments. Because I think sometimes with the word sabotage, it's almost as though we feel as though our minds are like deliberately trying to trip us up, or people think, what's wrong with me? Why am I deliberately sabotaging myself? And often it's not. Like, often you're trying your best, but it's self-defeating. It's not actually helping. And it's about recognizing that the mind is a negativity bias. It's the way that we've evolved. It's what's kept us alive over time. So we're always catastrophizing, looking at what's the worst case scenario, what could go wrong. And if we can then cope with that situation or prepare for it, we're much more likely to survive. So we from this lineage of ancestors, so we're always looking out for the negative. If it saw something that's brown, I'd rather think it's a snake than a stick, because that way you're still gonna be, you know, alive the next day. But that's not great from a happiness point of view or from a food point of view, because it means that if you eat less healthy than you intended, your mind can come down here like a ton of bricks. You know, I'm fat, I'm disgusting, what's wrong with me, I've got no control. Why do I do this? If anyone could see me, I'd just be so ashamed. I'll never lose weight, I'll always be fat. It's just, and we lose hope when we look to the future. And it's about catching the mind and realizing that that's not you. These are just automatic thoughts which are popping up, but you're not consciously choosing to have these thoughts. It's just, it's like a movie that's playing in your mind. And so I help clients over time to start to notice the different stories that play out, the movies that play, or the narratives, the thoughts that you have, and realize that actually that's just what your mind is coming up with, and it's been programmed or conditioned by society to think a certain way, but it's often not the truth, and it's often not very helpful. And when you can start to see that, actually, it sounds strange, but you have a different relationship with your thoughts, because I can have that, and I had it the other day actually, where I was driving, and my mind came up. I can't remember what I was feeling, really harsh. And I started laughing. I was like, whoa, that's intense. Like, yeah, I can't believe you're calling yourself that. That is, wow, that's heavy. And I just laughed. And I was like, okay, thanks very much, mind, for the for the harsh criticism, but I don't really need that right now.
Isn't it interesting when you can get to that point? Because I'm at that point as well. Now, where I can recognise my thoughts,
Yeah,
catch them most of the time.
yeah,
And I talk to my clients about catching your thoughts almost as if they're floating in front of your face.
yeah,
Hey,
totally.
I don't think right now. I'm going to throw you out the door. Yeah, that's really interesting. I love that. I love that analogy of the thoughts that are going through your mind about yourself are not actually the truth.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
No, it's just, it's just that inner voice has been it's part of it's genetic from our biology, the way that our brain's built, often focus on the negative, but a lot of time it's also the voices that we had growing up from parents, carers, family members, brothers, sisters, important relationships, and the way that they spoke to us, or what the messages that we took from that. It's society as well. Society, one of the most unhelpful things is this sort of fat phobia and fat bias, that if you're fat, it's linked with then being lazy, or that you have a lack of willpower, lack of control. And so our minds buy into that, even although there's no data to support that. And it's stigma, and it's a stereotype that doesn't hold true. But we then associate that with ourselves. So if we're heavier than we want to be, we think, oh, I don't have any willpower. And what we know from data, we know that people that tell themselves they don't have willpower, in those moments, end up having less willpower, because they think, well, I can't help it, and they feel out of control whenever they're around food. So recognizing that voice, and you might have people watching this, saying, "Oh, but it is true." That is the case. My mind is telling me the truth. Even if we just say, okay, let's say it's true. Another question is it helpful? Is it going to be helpful to move you into the direction that you want to go in? Because there's an amazing study that actually just came out in February, and it was looking at people's mindset and their genetics. And what they found was what people believed about their genetics was more powerful than what their actual genetics were. Wow. So whenever you told someone that actually they've got this genetic profile, which means that they feel really full after meals, once they know that, whether or not that's the case or not, essentially it's like names pulled out of a hat, their body started producing 2.5 times more of the satiety hormone that made them feel full. So actually, what we believe has a huge fundamental impact on not only what we do, but how our body responds and how it reacts.
Mm-hmm. Would you agree in saying that the most important thing when you're starting to consider losing weight as your goal would be to start addressing your thoughts and start addressing what's going on in your mind first before even starting to consider the food that you eat or the exercise that you do?
I think
Or
it's always really lovely to try and take also within with clients. We'll take both sides. We're going to be working on our noticing our thoughts, on being a bit kinder and a bit more compassionate towards ourselves, about giving ourselves permission to look after ourselves. A lot of the time when I'm working, particularly with women, is that they're putting so many other people ahead of themselves. They're putting their kids ahead of themselves because there's this narrative in society that a good mum does that. A good mum always puts her children first. So even the thought of prioritizing their, an aerobics class or sitting down and having a meal for them becomes something they feel really guilty about. Or they're putting their family or their career first. And so it's about giving yourself permission to know that actually your health is as important as anyone else's. And that doesn't make you selfish. Looking after yourself, self-care isn't selfish. It's just looking after your basic needs. So then you've got more fuel in your tank to be able to be the person that you really want to be, and to be able to, be as loving as you want to be, or have more patience, or have more creativity at work, whatever it is. But then at the same time, taking action as well, because it's whenever we do both at the same time and just taking really small steps, make it really gradual, that then we'll start to gain more confidence as well, because we'll see that actually, notice all, and it's about then the two coming together and recognizing when you do something different. So if you're normally always having a chocolate bar or two at 3:30 every single day, and you have one day where you end up having a healthier snack, give yourself a pat on the back. If that's something that you wanted to do, that's great. You've already broken that habit once. It doesn't mean that you'll never have a chocolate bar at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but there might be some days that you feel like, actually, I'm going to go for a 10-minute brisk walk. I'm going to get fresh air. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to, grab a pair on my way out, and then just have that time to myself. And if you do that once, amazing, give yourself that credit and see that actually you've got a bit more control than you might even give yourself credit for.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because giving yourself credit for doing something once is quite a hard thing to do as well, because it's just like, for me, a lot of the time, and these are thoughts that come up a lot for me, is that's not enough, but that's not
Totally.
enough,
Yeah.
that's not enough. Like, you've done it once, but that's not enough to be successful. So
Yeah.
these are things that come up
And
all
it's
the
about
time.
noticing that. It's about noticing, okay, my mind is coming up with it's not enough story. And, I remember I had one client, and the client's mind was continually saying, yes, but you should be doing that anyway. It was almost like, this is where he should be. He's falling short. And then whenever he did really, really well, but mind would say, yeah, but you should be doing that. So why would I give you any credit or praise for it? And of course,
Yeah,
then, you don't feel great about it. You just feel, oh, at least I'm not failing today.
yeah.
That's not. I don't think that's the sort of life that anyone would want to sign up for. So it's noticing that actually it's your mind. It's not you. You're not coming up with it. Your mind is automatically coming up with a judgment. And the more you can recognize it, the more you can notice it. Just by seeing it, oh gosh, I'm having the thought that you're creating a bit of space, and then, like you're saying, you can start to create a more compassionate voice.
Definitely. We've got a few comments here from some people that are watching similar narratives to what you were speaking about. I feel exactly the same, Rachel. It makes me hate myself if I go over my calories. I get disgusted with myself if I overeat. I think if I feel hungry, I'm going to be losing weight. These are just comments from when we start, all the way from when we started. So we want to give, what I would like to do in the last 5-10 minutes is just give people that are watching like a feeling of hopefulness that there is, there is another way. So before you go, I'm going to ask you, what practical tips could you give to the listeners that are maybe thinking, yeah, but it's okay for you? You're on the other side of this.
Yeah.
For those that are listening that are feeling the way that you're feeling at the moment, what maybe 2 or 3 things could they do straight away that might be able to give them some hope for, the immediate future, I suppose?
Yeah. This is going to sound a bit counterintuitive, but I'd say start by, as much as you can, forget about your weight, because you can't control your weight. Your body will take care of itself, and start to more focus on what your actions are. And I start with trying to think, how can I? So maybe an exercise might be, if I had like an ideal day, what would I be doing? What would I be eating? Who would be in my life? What would we be doing? And see if you can just take 1 or 2 of those parts of the day and doing it. Because essentially what I work on with my clients, as well as the mindset work, it's trying to make their life as fun and meaningful and as joyful as possible. And it's about finding that joy again, finding the joy in food, because food gives us so much pleasure. And actually, if you are going to have a meal, you may as well give yourself permission to eat it, because if you're going to eat it anyway, you may as well feel really good about it and savor it and enjoy every bite. And if you're going to be active, choose something that you find really fun, that you want to go to, that you might want, if it's a group class, go with your best friend that already goes or wants to go. If you've always wanted to take up, I had one client that always wanted to take up dance and never gave themselves permission to prioritize it. And their life has changed, where now every week on that day they go to dance, and it's something they really look forward to. And it's remembering time and time again that even a tiny little change can make a difference. Even if you go for a 2-minute walk and you just get a bit of fresh air, but you do 30 seconds of brisk walking just to get your heart rate up, you can get the same cardiovascular benefits and become fitter in a few minutes every week.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we spoke about with the whole not enough thing. That's a sort of misconception with exercise, is that if it's not all out, flat out, sweaty, heart rate, feel like I'm going to have a heart attack, sort of exercise, then it doesn't count. Like when people come to me and say, what's the best exercise for weight loss? And I say, well, the best exercise for weight loss is the one that you're going to stick to. So it's going to be the one you actually enjoy doing, and that might take you a little bit of trial and error. You might go through a body pump class and absolutely hate it, and then go for like a fun game of badminton with your friends or something and absolutely love it, and then sort of find what you love.
Or I might be running around the garden with the kids, or going to the park with the kids with the weather getting better, or while you're cooking, literally just doing a minute worth of star jumps while you're waiting for the microwave to ping, or whatever it is. Tiny little things, every little bit adds up.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Well, thank you very much for your.
What would your advice be? Someone that's kind of feeling that they need a little bit of a pinch of Rach hope. What would you say?
I would say, I can't believe how similar the way that we think is that find one thing that you can change and focus on getting really good at that. If you want to change just one thing, and it doesn't have to be a grand gesture, it can literally be something like, I know that it's healthier for me to eat more vegetables, so tomorrow I'm going to try a new one with dinner, and I'm going to try a different new vegetable every week for the next 4 weeks, because I know that's going to make me feel healthier. Or instead of sitting in front of the TV at night, now that the nights are getting a bit lighter outside, so like, I'm going to, after dinner, I'm going to go out for a 10-minute walk, or I'm going to take the dog for an extra walk. Or it doesn't have to be a grand, huge gesture. It could be one thing that's going to get you a little bit closer to where it is that you visualize yourself actually wanting to be, and also understand that losing weight or seeing the numbers on your bathroom scales going down is not going to make you, there's no correlation between that and you being happier.
Yeah.
There's, if you don't enjoy the process and there's something niggling at you with the process that you're taking at the moment, that you just feel like this is just not right, it should be an enjoyable process. And if it's not enjoyable, then it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not to say that there isn't going to be some forms of sacrifice needed at some stage, but for the vast majority of the time, it should be something that you look forward to. The exercise part should be something you look forward to. Your food should be something that you look forward to, and you can get there. It just requires a bit of self-reflection, self-understanding, and starting to listen to the way that your body works, because I think most people have lost that ability, especially if you've been on a diet for a long time. Kind of lose the ability to listen to what it is that your body actually wants, or needs, and just kind of understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because I've been there, where you might be just now if you're listening. I've been there. I've been on both sides of the story. And although it does seem quite insurmountable, it does feel like the hill that you've got to climb, or the mountain that you've got to climb, is just too big, so why bother starting? That was another thing that used to come up for me quite a lot. It was like, I've got so far to go, I can't even visualise being there. But don't visualise being at the end. Visualise being when you wake up tomorrow. Just focus on taking the next step rather than trying to climb the whole mountain in one day.
Totally. One step at a time, one day at a time. And what's lovely about what you're saying is it's about adding to your life rather than always focusing on taking things away. Often people think, right, I need to eat less chocolate or less chips, or eat less pizza or eat less whatever it is. But try, like you're saying, try and add things into your life. Okay, I want to eat more fruit that I really enjoy, or I want to try more variety of vegetables, or try more stir fries or salads or whatever it is that you really enjoy and find really tasty, and add things into your life. And the more you add, it'll just start to replace some of the habits which you don't want, will start to automatically change as well.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Add more positive things into your life. That focus on adding rather than focus on what you're taking away.
Yeah.
Or what you're depriving yourself of. Like, focus on what you're enriching your life with. I absolutely love that. Love it. Thank you so much.
So lovely speaking to you.
I know, and you as well. If anyone wants to see more of what you do, what's the best way to find you?
I was going to give my home address there, but that's probably not.
That's probably not a good
idea. My wife would be like,
want to send you any fan mail, then you can send.
Feel free to check me out on Instagram. I think it's Dr._Aria. On my website, dr-aria.com. And there's I've got a Facebook page, Dr. Aria Fit Method. So any of those, and feel free, if people have any questions, or feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, if anyone does have any questions after we finish, just pop a comment down underneath the video, and we'll get back to you. But I've just put Aria's Instagram handle, hashtag, whatever you call it, up on the screen. If you want to go and follow, then go ahead and do that. All that's left.
You'll get to see Alfie, because you didn't really get to see him.
Oh.
See if I can bring him over. Okay. Oh, there he is. Can you see him?
I'm looking for him. Oh, bless. My favourite kind of dog ever.
He's having a little nap. He's walked today.
Oh, that's great.
Great.